Hey everybody, welcome to my top 5. Today I've got 2-player games for you. Now these are games that are specifically designed for 2 players only. I want to mention that 2 of my favorite 2-player games have already been mentioned in previous videos that I've made. The first one is Battle Line, and I love Battle Line, so go and play it right now. Memoir 44 is great. So those 2 are not in my top 5 despite them being amazing 2-player games. I selected 2-player games that were a variety of gameplay so that it doesn't feel like all the games I pick are battle games or just one particular style or genre, so that you have a variety to pick from because they are all really stellar games. My top 5 2-player games is Emotep the Duel! These box lids are gonna be so small! Emotep the Duel is a great Emotep for 2 players. I actually think that this game is better than Emotep, just the regular game. I think when you play a 4-player of the original game Emotep, there's just too many turns before it gets back to you, and boats have sailed and you've missed opportunities to load cargo and you're just not in on it. And so turn order can just be so cruel in that. In the 2-player game though, there's 2 people and there's a wonderful 3x3 grid where on your turn you can place a meeple to start kind of investing in different cargo ships based on that particular column or the particular row that you put your meeple in. There are ships that are lined up on the right side and the bottom of the map, and so each one of those ships has some tile on it that gives you victory points. You've got pyramid tokens, obelisk tokens, temple tokens, everything that you saw essentially in Emotep. There are those same symbols and tokens in this game. And so what you want to do is place a meeple on your turn, or ship cargo, or play a special tile. And there are these special tiles that show up in those cargo ships. So when you ship cargo and you get that particular tile, later in the game you can play that tile on your turn, and it gives you some really souped up action. This game is clever and fast, and it actually cleans up Emotep in a way that makes me want to play it. And I do. I want to play this game now more than I played Emotep with 2, 3, or 4 players. And now I can play this with my husband, and that's it. It's perfectly suited for 2 players. Also, there's a B-side, and all of the tiles that give you victory points based on the tokens that you've been taking, you can have like this advanced play in Emotep the Duel on the B-side. Patchwork! Yes! Patchwork! Oh man! In Patchwork, you are using buttons as money, and you're getting these little swatches of patchwork quilt material, and you're putting them into a grid. Each player has their own board. With buttons as your currency, you are trying to fill up your whole board because empty spaces at the end of the game are going to count as negative points. And you also want to start building up those buttons as symbols because you get paydays every time you go past, and you get to place that too in those really hard to fill places. You can only select 1, 2, or 3 spaces from where the marker sits, and so you can't buy all the quilt pieces, but you can see what's coming up. You can just hope, oh, I hope they don't get this one in front of me because I really need that size. I have exactly the right amount of buttons to pay for it. You have to pay in time as well. Time is what moves your marker forward and advances you to those special places, or advances you too far so that your opponent can take multiple turns before it comes back to you. So there's such a great strategy here. It's clean and sharp. I think that there's planning that happens when it's not your turn, and so when it does come to you, play is really quick because pretty much you know what you can do and what you can't do. You know what you want to do, and you may not be able to do it, but you can plan ahead. The thing that I always try to go for is the bonus 7x7 filled in. The first person to get that takes that token and gets bonus victory points, but it has to be a 7x7 out of your grid on your board, all filled in, no empty spaces or gaps anywhere. This game lasts exactly the right amount of time for what it is, and it's highly replayable because every time you set up the game, all of the swatches of fabric, all of those kind of Tetris shapes, are placed in different places every single time, and so your strategy in the building of your quilt, your patchwork, is totally different every time, and it's super fun. Who doesn't like buttons? Asante! This used to be Jambo, and I think they souped up just a little bit, but essentially Asante is Jambo. Jambo was one of the first games that I thought, wow, games can be this good. This game is a little bit more juicy than the previous two games that I picked for 5 and 4. But what you're doing in Asante is you are racing to get 60 gold. If you're the person that gets 60 gold or more and you surpass the other player with equal turns, you win. As they say in the rulebook, the game is for 2 clever merchants. This game has such a wonderful variety of cards, and really that's where the game is at. You draw cards and you play these cards to get wares. And there's a space in front of you where you have a card that can keep up to 6 wares. You can also buy a new warehouse to make sure that you have more wares that you can keep than just 6, because you are going to get cards to buy them, and then you can sell those cards for even more once you've collected the ware or that resource that that card is looking for. And on your turn, you are spending your actions. Everybody has 5 actions. And I think the coolest thing about this game is they knew that 5 actions is too many to keep track of in your head, so they give you action tokens. And when you spend an action, you move it from the 5, take 1 and you put it into a different pile. The other reason that they have those action tokens is because if you do not use 2 or more of your actions on your turn, you get to take a gold, which I guess that's good, but it's also, you want to use all your actions if possible. There are ware cards in which you want to sell those particular wares to get gold, but there are also artifact cards, animal cards, and person cards, and those cards do all sorts of really cool things. The addition that Asante offers that Jambo didn't have are these holy places, and these are cards that are set out in the center of the table and give you a particular bonus when you use that as an action. I think that just offers a little bit more flexibility with play. Because players are limited in how many artifacts they're allowed to have, I think that really makes people careful or cautious about the turns that they make and what cards they play and what cards they don't play, which of course just amps up the strategy. So if you want to jump into an hour-long game that is just back and forth, who's going to get to that 60 gold first, and you want to play with a really, really richly themed game, definitely pull out Asante. 7 Wonders Duel. The original game, thumbs up. 7 Wonders Duel? I didn't know you could make 7 Wonders for 2 players and make it still so stinking good. That's why this is number 2 on my list. 7 Wonders Duel has the same iconography, the same cards, the same type of play in 7 Wonders, and it makes it for 2 players with the same military struggle and with the same artistic struggle and culture struggle, resources. I mean, the way that you can borrow resources from the other player. It's all so good. The thing I really like about 7 Wonders is that every age of the 3 ages, just like in the base game, has a different setup where you can see cards and where you can't see cards, where there's hidden information. That is so awesome. Normally in drafting, you're just getting cards from the next player and you're just looking at them, picking one, and then playing it in one of several ways. Well, in Duel, you're taking cards from a central area in which some information is, available to you and some of it's not. And so you're trying to strategically take certain cards because their other cards are covering up things that you know your opponent wants, or you don't want to reveal information on your turn so that they have more information and can make a better choice than you. You're also trying to get things that piggyback on each other. The same thing in Seven Wonders. If you have a particular card, it's going to let you build another card for free later on in Age 2 or Age 3. There are 8 wonders. Each player has 4. But once that 7th wonder is built, the other player who has not built that 4th wonder of theirs gets kicked out of the game. And so only 7 wonders can be built. I think that's also really cool too. So there's so many different races in this game. The military struggle, if you just let that go, if you let it slide, that military bar is just going to keep marching closer and closer, and that could be one way that you win the game. You cannot ignore what your opponent is doing in Duel if you want to win this game. It is so replayable, it's highly thematic, and I love the design of Seven Wonders Duel so much, and I had no idea that they were going to do that, or that it was even possible to make such a great 2-player game that is its own thing, yet still so reminiscent of the base game. Just double thumbs up. Codenames Duet. Hello. Codenames Duet is, yes, from Codenames, but it's made for 2 people and it's collaborative. I want you to know that there's a game out there that has you working together and that you can win together or lose together, which in my case happens maybe a little bit more often. As with Codenames, you have a grid of words that are in the central board. What you do is you say one word and then you say one number. And so that one word is supposed to relate to several cards on the board based on the number that you give. So if I look at the board and I see all these different words out there, I think I can connect 3 different cards with one word clue. I say bread 3. And then my opponent, or in this case, my collaborator, right, my partner, looks at the board and tries to identify those cards that have something to do with bread. 3 of them, to be exact. There's a challenge in the game. There are sheets of paper in which you can give yourself different guidelines for setup and different requirements for win. The cool thing about Duet is that each player is not going to necessarily go back and forth in clues. If someone thinks they have a really great clue, they just take one of the clue markers, which is the green side of the little chits. And if you miss, then you have these miss markers. And so each mission that you go on has a requirement of how many clues you can give and how many misses you can have before the mission has failed. I like it. I love the challenge and I love winning with my friend. I love it so much. I've really gotten into cooperative games, and I think Codenames Duet is kind of the coolest 2-player cooperative game out there, and they're kind of rare. I gotta say, there's nothing worse than having your partner pick the assassin position, because that's an immediate loss. Every time it's ever happened, there's just this, it's crazy, I can't believe you did that. But then you just scratch the cards, flip them over, start again, just play again. You can play this game as long as you want to. I think every round probably lasts about 20 minutes, max 30 minutes. So play a handful of these games. There's an hour and a half you've just knocked out. It's kind of addictive that way. So enjoy Codenames Duet. Also, the little gold look like popcorns.